Previously on Destiny.
We called it the Traveler, and its arrival changed us forever. Great cities were built on Mars and Venus. Mercury became a garden world. Human lifespan tripled. It was a time of miracles. We stared out at the galaxy and knew that it was our destiny to walk in the light of other stars. But the Traveler had an enemy, a darkness which had hunted it for eons across the black gulfs of space. Centuries after our golden age began, this darkness found us. And that was the end of everything. But it was also a beginning.
Since Oryx, the Taken King, created the Tablets of Ruin, the bowels of the deep have stirred, observing with bated breath to see the fruition of its stellar purpose realized in the numerous races of the universe. Although the Witness doesn't appear the worst threat in Destiny, I can assure you, what we are experiencing right now is merely a scratch on the surface that is the Light and Darkness saga. To that end, we can look at the final shape like another experiment, waiting until others rise to claim the mantle of Heresiarch or Black Edge. Welcome back, Guardians. My name is Samlab, and today I would like for us to discuss the Deep, aka the Darkness. For clarification's sake, we'll refer to Darkness as the Winnower, neither of which are the Witness. Long before the Elixni Whirlwind or humanity's Dark Age, before the collapse and before the darkness entered Sol, thrived a self-exhausted species known as the Proto-Hive. I'm sure many would have heard the name. During this time in history, the Hive was at war with the collective of species known as Ecumene, an interstellar government made up of multiple advanced spacefaring species from an unknown galaxy. Within this government were two of Fundament's neighbours to the Hive, both the Ammonite and Harmony. For 40 years, Oryx, Savathun and Xivu Arath made war on the Ecumene Council. It is during this time of war that the Osmium siblings would question their existence and their individual power. The Ecumene had proven themselves matching the Hive gods in strength, cunning, and war. This would drive the siblings to their second weakest moment in all Hive history, a moment when each sibling came face to face with themselves. Have a listen to this lore entry titled 27, Star by Star by Star. Beneath a green fire sky, in the throne world of King Oryx, our lord's embrace, we the Hive watch as Savathun puts her arm around Xivu Arath, and Xivu Arath clasps forearms with Oryx, and Oryx takes Savathun by the shoulder. They are huge, and they burn with furious power. But this embrace is weakness, and we despise it. Never before have we despised our lords. Have they failed us? We, the Hive, have been driven back world by world.
I am at my end,
Savathun says.
I plot and plan, but I cannot gather enough bloodshed to feed my worm. And the harder I try, the hungrier it becomes. I slaughter and kill,
Xivu Arath says.
but the harder I fight, the more my worms demand. I too am at my end.
The Ecumene War Council have killed me so many times,
Oryx says,
that I dare not go out into the universe, lest I need my might to protect myself. My worm chews at my soul in hunger. Is this the end of our crusade? Are we, the Hive, unworthy of existence?
Xivu Arath puts down her great head.
We should retire and gather our strength.
Savathun closes her eyes in puzzled defeat.
We should beg the worm our god to tell us what to do.
But King Oryx, who knows best the beauty of the final shape, roars at them.
Have you learned nothing? Would you deny our purpose? Whatever we do, we will do by killing, by an act of war and might. That is the final arbitrator we serve, that violent arbiter. And if we turn away from it, we deserve to be eaten. No, we must obey our natures. We must be long-sighted and cunning and strong. We must take that gift the worm our god has given us, this challenge, and find a way to keep existing.
How will we feed our worms?
Xivu Arath asks.
I know.
Says cunning Savathun.
I know a way. But it won't work unless we are killing the Ecumene by the billions. If we cannot beat their strength,
Says Xivu Arath.
we must infect their weaknesses. But they are lords of matter and physical law.
I know a way,
King Oryx says.
but it will require great power. More power than any of us can claim.
Then kill me,
Says Xivu Arath.
and use that killing logic and power you prove by killing something as mighty as me.
So King Oryx took up his blade and beheaded Xivu Arath.
And strangle me.
Says Savathun, holding a blade behind her back.
Use that killing logic. The cunning you prove by killing something as smart as me.
But King Oryx turned with the speed and might of Zevor-Arath and beheaded Savathûn before she could move. King Oryx was the first navigator with the map of death. These were true deaths, for they happened in the sword world. Then he went to the worm named Akar. Here, we are bearing witness to their lowest moment, but also the origins of the Hive tribute system, a system Savathûn would devote most of her existence to escaping in secret collaboration with her brother Oryx. But from here on is where things get a little more interesting. Oryx understood that to defeat the Ecumene Council, he would need more power. Now, the following action that Oryx is about to take bears similarity to an action that Eris Morn took during Season of the Witch, where Eris received all the tribute Savathûn had gathered over a millennium. And for just a moment, Eris Morn became the most powerful Hive god in Destiny's history. No one could stand above her. This is what Zevor-Arath meant when she said, "She will take up his mantle. When she is paired to her true shape, we will meet her on the bladed path." The bladed path is the logic of the sword, and these are ultimately the roads of the Winnower, that everything that deserves to live must be proven when two forces collide with one another. It could be said that the Winnower is behind the multiple tragedies spanning the hundreds of unknown worlds and galaxies. The very fabric of the universe is ponderous, of what we know as darkness within destiny. Over the course of millennia, numerous individuals have encountered the voice in the black gulfs of space, and we know now that it is widely believed that this was in fact the witness manipulating from behind the scenes. But just for a moment, picture the witness as a puppet, an actor behaving under the guise of what the penultimate might look like. Ido of House Light has brought many revelations to us about the true objective of the witness. Even the Veil containment logs suggest that the Veil began to speak to Maya Sundaresh before her death. Now, some believe that this voice is the same one that may have convinced the precursors of the witness to take matters into their own hands by merging the penitent faction. With the Hive siblings on the heels of defeat, after taking the logic of cunning from Savathûn and war from Zevor-Arath, armed with this knowledge, he would go to the worm god known as Akar. Have a listen to this lore entry from the Book of Sorrow titled King of Shapes. This is a coronation of Oryx, the taken king. It happened thus. In the cold abyss of the sword world, King Orash walked under a cloak of green fire. He walked through the sky, and the sky shuddered and froze beneath his feet. He walked until he had found Akar, the worm of secrets, who was denying a truth until it became a lie.
Akar, my god, worm of secrets, I, Oryx, sole king of the Hive, I have come to receive a secret. I want the secret power of the deep, which you hold.
Said Akar, whose voice was code.
No,
said Oryx.
You give nothing. Giving is for the sky. You worship the deep, which asks that we take what we need.
Akar said nothing, because it denied this truth. The truth might become false.
But you gave us your larvae, the worm,
said Oryx.
and that is why the worm devours us now, because it was given, not taken. So, I must take what I need from you, although you are my god.
Said Akar.
You have not the strength.
But that was a lie. Oryx had killed Savathun, his sibling, and Xivu Arath, his sibling, and he had the sword logic of killing them. Oryx, the first navigator, set upon his god with his sword and his word, and cut Akar to pieces, and took from those pieces the secret of calling upon the deep. He wrote this secret on a set of tablets, which he called the Tablets of Ruin, and he wore them about his waist. Then Oryx said,
Now I may speak to the deep, the beautiful final shape. I will be king of shapes. I will learn all the secrets of our destiny.
His speech to the deep is not recorded here, but it is known that he returned, and he said,
Now I am Oryx, the Taken King, and I have the power to take life and make it my own.
Then he went out into the universe and fought the Ecumene with his tablets, and the worm, his god, was pleased. As the story goes, Akar was the worm of secrets. He knew that Oryx would take what is needed from him, because those are the principles of the deep. Everything that deserves to live would take what is needed by destruction or assimilation in order to become the perfect shape. This very logic is what drives the witness forward, driven mad by pure hatred, and yet it is not convinced or even sure of whatever it believes will happen. Oryx takes the knowledge from Akar, the worm, his god, to commune with the Winnower, the deep. What happens next doesn't appear to have been recorded completely, because the only entity there at the time was Oryx himself. He was crowned Oryx, the Taken King, and when he emerged from the depths with his newly discovered power, the Ecumene Council were wiped out on the fractal wreath. This war conjured back the god of war, and together Xivu and Oryx destroyed them all. Oryx would make war against the Ecumene for 40 years, and at the end of the 40 years he would tell the Dakua Nest that he wanted to conspire against his sister Xivu Arath. But this was a lie, because when their guards were down, he would betray them and annihilate them. This would conjure back Savathun. However, having wiped out the Ecumene, a question remained. Savathun asks her brother whether he used her plan and how they would feed their worms. This is the dawn of the Hive tribute system. Okay, we've grasped the importance of the origins of the Hive siblings and looked at some party of how they would prey on planets and their peoples. Each was gifted a worm, but these worms required further tribute to survive, and the system which Oryx had employed wasn't working as well as it should have been. The more the Hive fought, the worse the hunger of the worms got, and the more strain this put on Oryx, Savathun and Xivu. The Taken King quickly realized this. Even after speaking with Akar, the truth of their bargain was nothing more than a trap. A truth twisted with lies to the benefit of the worms, their gods. Understanding that this wouldn't work at all, Oryx would take matters into his own hands again. Have a listen to this lore entry from the Book of Sorrow titled 30, A Golden Amputation.
Wrath. Behold the wrath of Oryx, coiled for 10,000 years. Behold the golden amputation The fall of Tashibeth. The end of an age. We beat the worlds of Tashibeth like skull drums, and we howl in joy for our black war moons as they ram silver orbitals and gleaming star webs where infant Tashibeth's son ravens curl and die unborn. In his throne world, Oryx paces 10 times. On the first pace, Craghor sends the accursed to blight the Tashibeth worlds. On the second pace, the Tai unleash their battle plates and arsenal ships to fight our moons. On the third pace, Oryx's war priests meet them in battle, and he is victorious. He paints the void with fire. He salts the earth with ash. On the fourth pace, Mengor and Crydudia knights go to the Raven Bridge, and they stand on it and kill the Tai for 10 years. On the fifth pace, the Tai Emperor Raven comes home to her bridge, and she cuts a moon with her talons. She cuts it open and kills its brood. On the sixth pace, Oryx speaks, saying, "Listen to me, Emperor Raven, and I will describe to you the last true shape, which is written on my tablet." And he puts his fist full of black fire, and he swallows up the Emperor Raven with a wound. Ayat. Only Oryx knows this power, the power to take. On the seventh pace, the perfect raven comes out of Oryx's wound, and she spreads her wings across Tashibeth. Never again is a Tashibeth child born. She is perfect. She enacts the will of Oryx. On the eighth pace, the Tai say,
Listen, you are spoilers. You are speedsters, and etc. You rot. Why do you kill? We made silver orbitals and golden star webs. We hatched eggs. We had a good thing. Our clothes were nice. Our food was famous. With one of her feathers, our emperor could have tickled the gods.
On the ninth pace, Oryx says, "This is the only God. This ability to dictate, that will and will not exist, this power to go on existing. This is your God. It is never ticklish." On the 10th pace, Taishbithi are extinct. Then Oryx says, "Listen, my siblings. Do you know what we have done? We have conquered our way to the edge of the deep. It whispers to me when I call on it, and it guides my flight. It says that we are at its threshold, and that I should come inside. I will go and speak to it."
According to lore we have available, it is suggested that the Taken King is the only one to have spoken directly to the deep, and from that conversation he received the power to take. In essence, this was the power to subjugate, to take something that is and shape it to perfect it. This is the dogma of the Winnower, that death is too easy an escape, that all life in the universe must collide and two opposing forces must clash for that self-sustaining truth to become its fullest reality. Though it hasn't been proven entirely, there is a lore entry I believe is from the Winnower, and the Winnower speaking to Oryx, and although the context is vague, It presents a clearer view of what motivates this entity and how it goes about achieving it. Have a listen to this next lore entry from the Book of Sorrow titled 22 Majestic Majestic. Oryx, my king, my friend, kick back, relax, shrug off that armor, set down that blade, roll your burdened shoulders and let down your guard. This is a place of life, a place of peace. Out in the world we ask a simple, true question. A question like, can I kill you? Can I rip your world apart? Tell me the truth, for if I don't ask, someone will ask it of me. And they will call us evil. Evil. Evil means socially maladaptive. We are adaptiveness itself. Ah, Oryx, how do we explain it to them? The world is not built on the laws they love, not on friendship, but on mutual interest, not on peace, but on victory by any means. The universe is run by extinction, by extermination, by gamma ray bursts burning up 1,000 garden worlds, by howling singularities eating up infant suns. And if life is to live, if anything is to survive through the end of all things, it will live not by the smile, but by the sword, not in a soft place, but in a hard hell, not in the rotting bog of artificial paradise, but in the cold, hard, self-verifying truth of that one ultimate arbiter, the only judge, the power that is its own metric and its own source, existence at any cost. Strip away the lies and truces and delaying tactics they call civilization, and this is what remains. This beautiful shape. The fate of everything is made like this. In the collision, the test of one praxis against another. This is how the world changes. One way meets a second way, and they discharge their weapons. They exchange their words and markets. They contest, and in doing so, they petition each other for the right to go on being something instead of nothing. This is the universe figuring out what it should be in the end, and it is majestic. Majestic. It is the only thing that can be true in and of itself, and it is what I am. This is the equation of the darkness. This is why it is referred to as the understanding of darkness, and where the sword logic came from. A fight between the opposite forces, the Traveler and the Winnower. This is what the game is made up of. The Traveler chose to enter the game, to become a new rule, one to thwart the many versions of self-adapting logics in motion, all running a predicated lie. The Hive, Vex, Cabal, Taken, Scorn, and to some extent humanity too. All these races have walked a very fine line between light and dark. This is where the narrative of the Unveiling Lorebook comes into play. While it is suggested that the lorebook is an allegory, this isn't true. I'm under the impression that the entire book has been written not by the witness, but by the Winnower. Have a listen to this lore entry from the Book of Unveiling titled P53. Thank you for making room in your life for another talking ball. Let me ask you a question. In the 3 billion base pairs of your root species genome, there is a single gene that codes for the protein called P53. The name is a mistake. The protein weighs only as much as 47,000 protons, not 53,000. If you were a cell, you would think P53 was a mistake too. It has several coercive functions to delay the cell's growth, to sterilize the cell when it is old, and to force the cell into self-destruction if it becomes too impotent. Would you tolerate a bomb in your body, waiting to detonate, if you deviate from the needs of society? However, without P53 as an enforcer, the body's utopian surplus of energy becomes a paradise of cancer. Cells cannot resist the temptation to steal from that surplus. Their genetic morality degrades as tumor suppressor genes fail. The only way to stop them is by punishment. You now confront the basic problem of morality. It is the alignment of individual incentives with the global needs of the structure. Patterns will participate in a structure only if participation benefits their ability to go on existing. The more successful the structure grows, the more temptation accrues to cheat, and the greater the advantage the cheaters gain over their honest neighbors, and the greater the ability they develop to capture the very laws that should prevent their selfishness. To prevent this, the structure must punish cheaters with a violence that grows in proportion to its own success. My question follows. If P53 an agent of darkness or the light? If the Winnower is a being of infinite possibility, then is there more to the story than previously understood? Could it mean that the unveiling lore isn't just a poem or story, but a somewhat referenced retelling of the very first moments of Destiny's prime universe? The Winnower suggests that it made us, that it knew to speak to us in our own language, through our own understanding, communicating. Potentially, this could explain why it sounds like a writer, and why, linguistically, the witness's speech pattern resembles the Winnower. After all, the flower game is a game of both light and darkness, or traveller and winnower, and each has entered by becoming the rules of the game. Have a listen to this lore entry from the Book of Unveiling titled Pattern Fall. The patterns that escaped the garden landed in the water. Of course, there was no water at first. The patterns were abstract waves tumbling through the fire of the early universe, trapped in chaos, cycling through desperate self-preservation tautologies, while vast beings from beyond the narrow dominion of cause and effect thrashed and battled around them. For an eon, they were nothing but screaming equation vermin, scurrying through the quantum foam, fleeing ultimate erasure. But they were tenacious. They propagated in saline meltwater of comets orbiting the first stars. That broth of chemicals became their substrate, and they learned to cauterize impossible chemistry with quantum tricks. Then they rained from the sky into the steaming seas of fallow worlds, and there they built their first housings from geometry and silica. In all their transformations, they retained that kernel and ultimate self-sufficiency that had made them victors in the flower game. But they are not incontrovertibly destined to rule this cosmos. They were made before light and darkness. But the rules are different now, and even this pattern must adapt. They are not all mine, not in the way that admirers such as my man Oryx are mine. Utterly devoted to the practice of my principle. But some of them have nonetheless found their way home. I have quoted this lore entry multiple times, partly due to evidence within it pointing to the birthplace of the Vex. From my understanding, the first errant pattern within the garden was the Vex. Their primary objective was to make sure that all life within the garden was the same. But the Traveller didn't like this and thought it was boring, and naturally the Winnower disagreed. Their very next actions would lead to the birth of multiple universe within Destiny, and ultimately the Soul System. It would also lead to the creation of the Leviathan, proto-worm gods, and Ahamkara, being forced to grow huge and flee from the garden, out into the madness of interstellar space. You've all heard me talk about the idea that the Prime Universe, Gardener and Winnower, light and darkness are all some kind of sub-tier level of existence. From a writer's perspective, these narrative breadcrumbs hint to grander schemes afoot within the universe of Destiny. I wasn't kidding when I tweeted several days ago that the last 5 to 10 years of lore in Destiny is about to pay off in a grand way that no one could ever have anticipated. Now, I understand what many of you may be thinking. Strictly speaking, some of you may say that unveiling lore hasn't ever been relied upon so heavily, that the information within these entries is ambiguous, speculative, or aragolical at best. While I wouldn't deny such statements, I hasten to point you to my suggestion that allegories in their very nature serve a purpose. The very nature of an allegory is to convey semi-hidden or complex meanings through symbolic figures, actions, imagery, or events which together create the moral meaning the author wishes to convey. Wherein there does it say it's only an allegory, it can't be trusted? Sure, you don't have to take my word for it, but I would highly suggest reviewing my other case studies or thesis on the complex matters of light and dark in Destiny. And then you can decide whether what I'm saying is pure madness or makes actual sense. The struggle between the light and darkness can be observed in the way some Greek mythology plays out. There's Kronos, the father of all gods, his children, the gods of Olympus. Then there are all manner of beings and creatures which roam the earth, including humanity. Where does this put humanity and Guardians on the map of Destiny's universe? It's hard to say for certain, but speculatively, the final shape presents a fascinating idea. Two forces, and neither have the power to undo one another. But Guardians, however, they are on the verge of one possible final shape, a paracausal union of light and darkness, what has otherwise been referred to as Grey Guardians. The idea behind this concept, figuratively speaking, is that by the light and dark combining, Guardians have evolved. Fully man, but also fully supreme being of unimaginable power. Yes, humanity has chose to wield the power of light and darkness in particular fashions, through sword, glaive or firearm. Even further though, There is examples of Guardians wielding their paracausality in non-combatant fashions. During Season of Arrivals, Eris Morn and the Drifter ask the Nine a curious question. What is the nature of the darkness? A peculiar question, but not one without merit. Grasping the nature of darkness is like saying, what is a shadow? Rather than simply provide the answer, the Nine were gracious enough to reveal their answer through visuals. This was the Prophecy Dungeon, and the key to answering the question. I made a video about this several years back, discussing this answer. If you haven't watched it, then definitely take a look. This idea is about to be realized in the final shape. The thing is that the Nine viewed light and darkness as just what they are. Two forms of light. Polar opposites, born from the same seed, and yet scientifically, one cannot exist without the other. Have a listen to this audio log from Eris Morn and the Drifter at the end of the Prophecy Dungeon.
The Nine have spoken. Their answer is complete. Then we learn nothing.
I wouldn't say that. Clearly, the Nine pass no judgment on dark or light, and they love passing judgment. Trust. That means in their eyes, the two are the same.
Zavala will disagree.
As I mentioned before, the Nine understood a lot about what was to come, and they did their best to give us the answer. The answer was and is prismatic, but they weren't the only ones. This may be speculation, so stick with me, but the root of Nightmare's raid is the pinnacle of examples for us to learn from. The Traveler, when it attacked the pyramid ship, planted a tree of silver wings, and the tree fed not only on the light, but on the dark. The light's final gift. But what if the Witness and the Veil weren't the only two capable of unfolding a final shape? For years and years in Destiny, we've mostly heard stories about the machinations of darkness, Witness and the Winnower, with only some reference of the Traveler and the light where there is relevance. But consider this. What if the Traveler had its own ideas? A grand scheme for its final shape? Knowing that the Guardian had already begun to use and wield the conscious power of darkness as they wielded the light. That what if the two were combined together to bring about something that would be inconceivable? That is what prismatic and transcendence are. The paracausal union of light and darkness. An aspect of the Traveler's final shape. Hear me out for a second. If this happens to be true, then things are going to get a whole lot more interesting. And before you get excited, I'm not the only one to discuss this idea. Bife has an entire video on this topic that he did a few years back. I'll link it in the description if you'd like to watch it, because it presents really strong ideas. As we get closer to the final shape, you will hear this discussion happen from time to time, and this is the exciting part of the conversation. And personally, I hope we can go into more detail on these discussions, and the more we learn about what is in store for the final shape and its ending of the epic saga. When it comes to being a herald of potential futures, Destiny hasn't run short of outliers who have their fair share of enlightened moments. Eris Morn, the Hive siblings, Emperor Callus, Elsie Bray, formerly the Exo Stranger, the Nine, the Elixni of House Light. Even pages of lore point to futures that right now don't seem as distant as they originally appeared. I believe that there are a number of ways in which the story could go. The first would be the tying off of loose ends. Now, this needn't happen within the final shape, but whatever expansion follows the subsequent episode of Echoes, Revenant and Heresy will undoubtedly be about how humanity and Guardians take their first steps into the future. There are a couple of stories that could be dipped into in order for humanity to move out amongst the stars once again. We have the story of Maya Sundaresh and her Veil containment travesty. Lakshmi too is Maya Sundaresh, wherever she is. It will change the course of Destiny's history for a long time, literally and figuratively perhaps. Eramis, Kell of Darkness, has also left the Sol system in search of other Elixni, and I suspect to rediscover who she is. For so long, this fallen Elixni had defined herself through pain, regret and cruelty. And with all those undone, there is no telling what may become of her, and whatever is left of House Darkness. Clovis brave for multiple reasons. He is a wildcard, an anomaly, who is extremely dangerous even in his giant robotic head form. The Brave family is tenacious, if nothing else. After having Rasputin plucked from his grasp and almost destroyed, there is no question that Clovis would have developed some sort of contingency plan should his plans fail. The worst part about this is, with the war mind gone, there is nothing that could stop Clovis from accessing information of systems that he would otherwise have been held back from. There is also the Pillory network, which Anna Bray and Jinju discovered during their mission to Mars. This system was designed to quarantine rogue AI, and more specifically, rogue war mind AIs, of which Golden Age teachers were many, even if some of that information was retconned. I would guess that if Anna Bray wanted, the same technology could be reverse engineered, allowing for a new Rasputin to be made or even develop another war mind. I have already spoken about this ahead of time and multiple times, and I will be again very shortly, but the premise of heresy presents an interesting prospect, even if it is just speculations. Now that Eris Morn has become the god of vengeance, there is no winding the clock back. If you are new and just started watching for the first time, I will put a link in the description of that video, with a playlist focused on what's happening since Season of the Witch. But to catch up quickly, Eris Morn became a hive god, and entered into a war of attrition with Savathun and Xivu Arath. Eris's goal was to find a way to eliminate Xivu Arath, so that she wouldn't be able to bring disaster upon the last city of humanity, and Earth as a whole. The victory was Eris, now empowered with all millennia worth of tribute from Savathun, had entered into godhood, and banished the third sister from her own throne world. The original god of vengeance is Xivu Arath. However, when Eris Morn claimed this title, she intentionally subjugated the sword logic by changing it principally. In order to become a hive, Oryx, Savathun, and Xivu had to consume a worm belonging to the worm god Yule, Er, Zol, and Akar. In order for Eris's plan to work, she had to become the very thing she had loathed since the day she crawled her way out of the Hellmouth on Luna. Like the bargain the worm god struck with the hive siblings, Eris Morn would need to enter into her own pact. To do this, she uttered the names of Akar, Zeta, Sel, Aura, and Lace. Uttering the names of worm gods and Leviathan, both alive and dead, provided a strategic value, but it isn't just enough to call out names. An entity must also respond to the call in order for a pact to be formed, and Arsa was able to answer this call, which in turn enabled Eris Morn to don her new hive morph and initiate her plan to subjugate hive logic. So, yeah, everything appears to have gone according to plan, but if there is one thing we know about the hive and Savathun in particular, it's that nothing is as it seems. By Eris meddling with hive logic, she inherently entered into the school of Oryx. Interstellar space. There are, of course, a plethora of ideas we could discuss, but I think one of the most fascinating out of all of them is the concept of humanity moving out amongst the stars. A new golden age, maybe. Neptune and the city of Neomuna are some of the most prime examples of what the human civilization farther afield could look like. This could happen in multiple ways. with the existence of species like the Ammonite, Hive, Elixni and Cabal, there is no telling what kind of world exists out amongst the stars. And there are many ways it could be achieved. There is even a lore entry that presents such an idea. Have a listen to this lore entry from the Grimoire card titled Mysteries, the Vault of Glass 3. A starfield. The stars swing slowly across the ghost's field of view. Just darkness and the blazing fury of distant suns as the ghost tumbles through empty space. Hours of this. With a wash of power, a huge convoy of ships drops into reality from warp. A convoy of Guardian craft, hundreds strong. Ships of all sizes and shapes can be seen. From venerable craft that have been salvaged from the Golden Age through the city designs, to vessels that have yet to emerge from the shipwrights' hangars. The ships are battle-scarred, many are barely spaceworthy. As warp drives wind down, several seem to lose power and begin to drift. Some of the largest craft bear imagery familiar to frequent visitors to the tower, dead orbit symbols, the simple icon of the Vanguard, the new monarchy and future war cult as well. Though fewer examples can be seen, others bear symbols never seen in the tower to date. Every single ship, from the largest cruiser to the smallest personal craft, carries shards of stone, remnants of the city and the tower. Banners too, tattered and worn from entering and leaving warp. The fleet is only visible for a few breaths, less than a minute. Then, with a massive flash of light, the fleet jumps on. The craft that have lost power are left behind, spinning and whirling away from the etheric wake of their powered fellows. The ghost spins on, and soon enough, only stars fill its field of view until the fragment ends. If I was able to animate, this scene here would be incredible to see. Many Guardians will not recognize the names of groups just mentioned in the lore entry. Dead Orbit, New Monarchy, Future War Cult. These were all factions that were around during the city age of the last city. Each faction existed to represent different sects within the city walls. This scene presents an idea, I think, that captures the imagination of all our inner child, the birth or the dawn of fresh, hopeful stories involving a wayfaring humanity, facing the odds of brave new frontiers out in the wilds of space. I don't know about you all, but my thoughts is this is something that would be incredible to see. There's something that really stands out within this entry, and it begins with the ghost drifting through space, and ends with a similar perspective, as if the writer is conveying some kind of end. The idea of the ghost tumbling through space presents a myriad of questions like, why is the ghost floating through space? How did it get there? Where is the Guardian that this ghost belongs to? Why didn't the ghost radio for help? Personally, the sense I get is that perhaps the ghost is now lightless, unlinked from the Traveller, because the Traveller is no longer around, or worse. This wouldn't be the first time we as Guardians have witnessed ghosts disappearing, or even dying due to unforeseen circumstances. Guardians, for years we have all posed various questions on the true origins of the darkness, Veil and ultimately the Winnower, and perhaps you have somewhat of a clearer picture of what these entities are. The reason I bring this up is due to the fact that the final shape isn't just the end game of Destiny, but it could also be looked at as some sort of precursory moment, a prelude to what comes next in Destiny. I believe that the final shape will make a fascinating conclusion. Having said that, there is something about the end of this saga that doesn't quite feel like it's really drawing to a close, meaning there is just far too much to be wrapped up within the light versus darkness saga. This can be considered speculation, but it is my belief the core confrontation of the story within Destiny will be concluded. The lore of Destiny has made several hints in the past about the collision of light and darkness being a cycle, one that is perpetuating constantly and always moving. Whatever the case, we're left with an open ending. The final shape is going to present many new ideas, where a lot of stories will conclude and new stories begin out amongst the stars. The light lives in all places, in all things. You can try to block it, even try to trap it, but the light will find a way. But that's all I have for you. I hope you have enjoyed watching and listening to this video. If you did, then consider giving it a like and comment below with your thoughts. Tell me, do you think the future of Destiny will be on Earth or elsewhere? Feel free to subscribe and click the bell to find out when my next lore videos go live. Remember that no matter what you're facing at this moment in time, you can do all things. Stay safe and Godspeed.